File item number 6, the lead scientist report.
And today, as you can see, we don't have our lead scientist, although the next item on the agenda will deal with that, but we're asking Sam Heriter to...
An absent once, but a present future king, right?
Yes.
Right.
I feel a little odd being squeezed between Cliff Daum and the new lead scientist. I'm not quite sure why I got this honor. Something about adaptive management experiment. So.
Right.
So there's 3 items in the lead scientist report. The first is, this may be old news to some of you if you've been listening to the news, but the final fall midwater trawl fish abundance indices are out, and the memo from Fish and Game that gives the details of that is in your packet. And the big news item there is that fall Delta Smelt Index is the highest since 2002. It's 343, so it bumped up quite a bit even from the last report that Cliff gave. So,
Sam, I thought the report was interesting, as it always is. But what really caught my attention is this time they included charts that go back as far as there seem to be credible records for species counts for comparisons. And in some of the earlier ones we went through, they were doing 5 years, 7 years, 8 years. Mm-hmm. I like historic stuff because you get a trend or some understandings of trend, and it puts it in perspective. Is this some? I assume it's more work.
I'm assuming this is the way they're going to be doing it from now on. That they'll show this history,
which would be, I think, would be helpful.
Yeah,
would be very helpful.
I think it's very informative, and when I look at the numbers for Delta Smelt, this year's number is quite a contrast to the last several years, and would even fit in with some of the numbers from earlier years. So it's a big change. The numbers for some of the other species aren't quite as good. The midwater trawl index for striped bass is a little better. It's best since 2006, I believe, and then for longfin smelt, it's also the best since 2006. And I think, unless there's any questions, I'll leave it at that.
Randy?
Sam, a question on striped bass. Is a good number good, or is a good number bad?
Well, I guess it depends on how you look at it. I know that there's been somewhat of a disconnect between the juvenile striped bass number and the actual population of adult fish. So it could be good, it could be bad. There's not a real strong connection between the two at this time, and nobody's quite sure why. So there's still a pretty decent population of adult striped bass, even though the juvenile numbers have been down. So if you want fewer striped bass, a good number is bad.
So we can take modest pleasure in the slight increase this last year in striped bass, but be dismayed that they're still eating young salmon to the disadvantage of salmon population, something we'll discuss later when we talk about the comment letter on the Fish and Game proposed rulemaking.
Right. So.
Okay.
I also want to point out the fall midwater trawl index is kind of the main number for getting an estimate of the population for Delta Smelt and the other species of concern going into the following year's water season. So it's an important number. The next item is the latest issue of San Francisco Estuary Watershed Science that we support, as you know. This edition is a special edition, and it's focused on research from the San Francisco Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve. So there are a series of articles that deal with a variety of topics, wetland plants, birds, invertebrates. And I did want to point out that this does include Sassoon Marsh. So even though it says San Francisco Bay, it's also within the purview of the council. And so it's an interesting bit of reading. And there's an editorial introductory article in there that's probably a good place to start. And you can access that either through the science program site. We have a link there, or the link that's shown in here. So
yeah, I read one of the articles and just haven't gotten to the others yet, but it's a reminder of how useful the focus of this, since we're one of the main financial sponsors of this, cooperating with the University of California, Davis, and it's just there's a lot of really specific stuff that we can learn from, and this is also peer-reviewed articles, but produced more rapidly than you can do if you're waiting for a hard printed copy, which is part of the utility of the information. I didn't, however, have time to go check the publications to see what the second set that you note will come out later this year. Is there a focus on these second pending articles? Set of articles?
It's also from the Estuary Research Reserve. I'm not sure what the topics are going to be. The other thing I would point out in this series of papers is that one of the papers on climate change effects is actually a project that was funded by the science program. So that's one of our funded projects.
Right.
And
that's the one that led to, we got a press call asking for comments on a just released report, and somehow the call got circulated down to Ms. Hastings, I believe, who said, when they say, well, what do you think of this new report? She said, well, we sponsored it, which seemed a surprise to the reporter and occasionally to other people. But I think good result. Good result.
Yeah. A major theme in this series of papers is climate change and its potential effects on wetlands and the estuarine ecosystem. And one of the key conclusions as you go through this is that those ecosystems are pretty vulnerable to climate change, and they're going to be one of the places that it's most evident as you go through changes in freshwater inflow and sea level rise. So.
Right.
The last item in the report is a new journal article, and this is in press. It's not out yet. It'll appear in Estuaries and Coasts, and this is a synthesis paper that reviews a wide range of information that looks at multiple contaminants and other factors in the system, and gives some ideas about their contribution to the pelagic organism decline and how they may be involved. So I guess the basic conclusion is that it's not entirely clear what role they played in the pelagic organism decline, but they probably do have some effect. And in particular, the location of the season where there's most likely to be effects from these contaminants is during the spring months and in the upper freshwater parts of the estuary, like the Cache-Chalou area, where these species of concern are spawning. So during their spawning and their larval part of their life cycle, they're probably most vulnerable. And it talks about some new approaches to try to get at this. So they're not looking at outright toxic effects. They're looking at indicators of sublethal effects. So lower growth rate, impaired swimming, changes of behavior, that sort of thing. And it's a rough world out there for little fish. So if they're top of their game, they're going to get disappeared real quick. So this is a project that was funded by the IEP. So
by what?
In the Interagency Ecological Program.
IEP.
So we have the IEP lead scientist in our office. So she's involved with this, and it was funded through the National Center for Ecological Analysis and Synthesis at UC Santa Barbara. So it's got a long list of authors, but it's one of these high-level synthetic
I assume
projects.
you folks are going to have looked and will look at this for any possible impact it might have for the stressors discussion that, we've got a nascent form in the fifth draft Delta plan, and I assume this might lead to some amplification or expansion of that discussion if the information is relevant.
Yeah, I think it is relevant, and it speaks to the issue of you can't just look at each contaminant or each issue in isolation. You have to kind of put them together and see whether they're having a combined effect. So it is
Which
important.
I just note also indirectly relates to the last agenda item today, which is the Independent Science Board report from Dr. Norgard, which is their discussion of the role of science in this entire process and how it plays, which directly will relate to this discussion. Okay. Questions of Mr. Herter? Yes, Randy.
Sam, Dr. Dahm has brought several studies and reported on the effects of the food supply in terms of toxics and pollution. But to my knowledge, we haven't really talked about anything that has directly impacted lethally the fish population. Is that what this report is suggesting?
This is saying it's possible that those kind of effects can take place, at certain times in certain places. There could be combinations of contaminants that could cause lethal effects, but it's more likely going to be some of those sublethal effects, and not just on the food supply is part of it, but also directly on those organisms themselves. So they're just not as fit and able to deal with the challenges in their lives. The end result is that they're gone one way or the other, whether it kills them outright or whether they're less fit for survival.
Okay. Other questions? Sam, thank you very much. Okay.